The new White House Deputy Press Secretary, TJ Ducklo, real name, we checked it, is in trouble, but not that much trouble after threatening a reporter at Politico who was inquiring about his new relationship with a reporter at Axios that was potentially raising ethical concerns. The confrontation began on Inauguration Day after Tara Palmeri, a co-author of Politico's playbook, contacted Alexi McCammond, the Axios reporter, for comment while one of her male colleagues left a message for Ducklo, according to sources. Ducklo subsequently called a playbook editor to object to the story, but was told to call the playbook reporters with his concerns. But instead of calling the male reporter who initially contacted him, he instead tried to intimidate Palmeri by phone in an effort to kill the story, literally saying, "I will destroy you," which is great comic book dialogue for this deputy. Man, if you want to know what happens when you give people just a little bit of power. Anyway, he also said that he would ruin her reputation if she published it. And it's a credible threat because he's doing a great job of ruining his own. During the off the record call, he made derogatory and misogynistic comments, accusing Palmeri of only reporting on his relationship, which, due to the ethics questions that factor into the relationship between a journalist and a White House official, falls under the purview of her reporting beat because she was, quote, jealous that an unidentified man in the past had wanted to F McCammond, but not you. He also accused Palmeri of being jealous of his relationship with McCammond, although they note Palmeri had no prior relationship or communication with McCammond before calling her to report on the playbook item, which was a story that she was assigned and had not independently pursued. All of this in just the first couple of weeks of the whole Biden thing. Well, now he has been suspended briefly, as was announced today.
Relations role dealing with female reporters when he made such sexist comments to this female reporter reaching out for a request for comment?
Well, let me first say, obviously, Caitlin, that I take this very seriously. I'm a woman, obviously, but I've been in this town working in press and communications for nearly 20 years, almost 20 years. And I think many of you know me and have worked with me closely. And many of you know many people in this building, including the president, who take these allegations quite seriously. TJ Ducklo, who is the deputy who you're asking about, has apologized to the reporter, quite shortly after the comments were made. He had a heated conversation about a story related to his personal life. I'm not saying that's acceptable, but I just want to be clear that it was not about an issue related to the White House or a White House policy or anything along those lines. He's the first to acknowledge this is not the standard of behavior set out by the president, nor is it the standard of behavior set by me, and I'm his direct supervisor. In addition to his initial apology, he sent the reporter a personal note expressing his profound regret. He has been placed, as you noted, on a 1-week suspension without pay. That is a significant step. I'm not aware of a history of that step being taken. You all can check me on that. And in addition, when he returns, he will no longer be assigned to work with any reporters at Politico.
But just Politico, still other women. And bear in mind, guys, that Biden had announced somewhat controversially that he cared so much about respect in the workplace that if one of his people disrespected someone, they would be fired on the spot.
Well, first of all, it all sounds very high school with, this guy was with that girl and that girl was jealous of this guy and all that stuff. And how ironic that the person who makes these comments is a deputy assistant a press secretary. Like his whole job is to be in communications, and for him to not know that even on a closed phone, if you were the IT guy, you'd be like, all right, that guy's kind of a weirdo. He kind of keeps to himself and he yells at people. But your whole job is to communicate, you dum-dum. And thirdly, I think perhaps they didn't clean the White House enough when the former administration left. So it's the mojo from that administration. It could be that he just touched the phone that one of Trump's people had touched, and it just made him into he turned into the Incredible Hulk for a second, and then he had to drop the phone and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. And lastly, dude, all you gotta say, someone asks you about a relationship, just go, hey, it's complicated. Do the Facebook. What is wrong with you, Ducklo, or whatever your name is?
Well, first of all, when they go duck low, we should go duck high. Oh. So I could have
Cut his Skype.
This whole thing, okay? All right, now that I've gotten past the awful dad jokes, although I loved it and you know it, and you partly loved it. Let's get real here. So look, guys, there's this would have been a closer case, except for one thing that is clearly and massively over the line. So the reason why I say you might be surprised, well, wait, how is it in any way a close case? So look, that I'm gonna end you talk apparently is super common in Washington. And they go off the record, and then they go, "Oh, I'm gonna do this to you, and I'm gonna do that to you," and they all think they're in an episode of Veep, and maybe they are. You know, people say in Washington that Veep is probably the most accurate show about Washington. So that's a comedy on HBO where they say the most absurd things. All the politicians are the dumbest people you've ever met, and everyone curses like a drunk sailor. So can I see someone saying that because that's the culture of political speak behind the scenes? Yeah, is it dumb? Of course it's dumb, right? And so by the way, they were off the record. Now, other people somehow magically got their off the record conversation. So did someone at Politico, and it might not have been the reporter, it might have been an editor. There's someone there leaking off the record conversation to get Ducklo in trouble? Definitely. Was that cool? No, that is not cool. And now a lot of reporters are saying, well, if you threaten to end me, that's not off the record. That's not a thing. You made that rule up. In other words, if I don't like it enough, I'm gonna pretend you weren't off the record. Now, so what's the thing that makes Ducklo guilty and clearly over the line? You called a female reporter and started talking about her sex life? Are you insane? And then you said she was jealous because she didn't get to have you? Oh, that's not even close. And then saying that she wanted to F someone else and that was the origin of her jealousy? In a professional context, nah, that's not anywhere near acceptable. So look, I don't know anything else about Ducklo. You know, and the Biden team presumably has way better standards than Trump's, but they also have to prove that, right? And they got to live that. So I think those comments put him in a world of trouble. I don't know how he gets past those comments, especially being in the communications department, as Moss pointed out.
Jake, to go to your earlier dad joke, Ducklo has got to duck go.
Oh,
let's get a sign made. Call Simon Simonson
right there.
Yeah. No, he can't. You can't expect reporters, let alone female reporters from non-political outlets, to talk to this guy. Why should they be forced to do that? And this guy came out the gate firing. He's been there for 2 weeks, and he thinks this is appropriate. I can threaten people in this way. It's not acceptable. If this was under Trump, if it was one of his goons, we would be attacking him day after day. And so we're gonna be fair. And we're gonna do it here. And Biden promised that they were gonna be different. So this isn't remotely acceptable. I don't think anything about it is acceptable. He's gotta go. I'm sure he'll get some job like managing a hedge fund or something like that. Or they can do something that doesn't involve interacting with the media, but they need to send a strong signal that they're not going to wage this like sort of quasi war against the media like Trump did. This guy has definitely got to go.
Do you think Trump is reading this and going, "Get me that guy. I like that guy. Get him in here. He's a misogynist. Get him in here."
Yeah, nobody else will work for him, so he's like, yeah, sure. So look, but one last thing here, and this is about the press more than it is about this particular story. So when Ducklo knew that they were going to do a story about him in Politico, and it was not going to put him in a positive light, his first step was to threaten the reporter. But his second step is equally interesting. They then went to People magazine and gave them the scoop, and People magazine wrote it in a super positive light. Like it was this beautiful romance that had blossomed on the campaign trail, and they loved each other so much that they got past the issues and they had done everything right. Like she took herself off the beat of covering him, etc. And why did People write it so positively? Because they got access.
Yep.
And that's how that game is played.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.